shoulder, hold. Pose. Time. Pose.
A military badge of honor. Indiana's Bill Hanna, one of the few who have ever guarded the tomb of the unknown soldier in the nation's capital.
You spend about 9 months in training there to receive your Tomb Guard identification badge, which is now, I think, the least given out award in the U.S. Army. My number is 441. I think there's about 770, somewhere maybe a little bit more than that right now, that have ever been there. It's high pressure. The uniform standards there exceed any unit in the military anywhere.
It's always been about service for Bill Hanna, his military service playing a major role to becoming a key leader in transforming the economy in Northwest Indiana. He's our guest on this edition of the Business and Beyond podcast. Hello and welcome to the Business and Beyond podcast with Gary Dick, presented by PNC. Bill Hanna's service in the military laid the foundation of what would become a career devoted to his community in Northwest Indiana. Bill has served the city of Valparaiso, president and CEO of the Regional Development Authority in Northwest Indiana, and is now an executive with the Dean and Barbara White Foundation. Here's Gary's conversation with Bill Hanna.
And certainly very pleased to be joined on the podcast this week by Bill Hanna, the executive director of the Dean and Barbara White Family Foundation, longtime CEO of the Northwest Indiana RDA, the Regional Development Authority, and such a major player in so many positive things happening in Northwest Indiana. Bill, great to talk to you. How are you?
It's great to be here. How you doing, Gary?
Good. I'm doing great.
Yeah.
I know things continue to go well in Northwest Indiana. You and I have talked over the years and done a number of interviews, and it's been fun for me, fun for us to cover this, what I think is really a transformation of sorts going on in Northwest Indiana. You know, after years of talk and maybe not a lot of progress necessarily, things have certainly shifted, and this vision and the planning that's been kind of in the works for a while coming into play. How would you, you're a Northwest Indiana guy. How would you characterize what's going on in the region right now?
Well, I like to use the word momentum an awful lot right now. And I think sometimes when I use it, it almost sounds like we're reacting to momentum. But the truth is it's been driven intentionally for a lot of years. And so it's fun to see this confluence of events kind of come together. And I mean, just throwing one out for an example where I think the state really did some great work that's culminated in some movement is when Governor Daniels put a cap on the taxes and made a constitutional change that told industry that this is a permanent thing. And so when you look at something like that and how it develops over the years, and then the unfortunate sort of developments that are happening in Illinois, it ends up driving population movement along with all the other things that have taken place too. And so it's all kind of coming together right now to me.
Yeah.
And so it's a neat thing to see.
Talk about some of these major projects. And again, you've been intimately involved in so many of them that folks around the state, maybe they've heard about but don't fully appreciate. The South Shore Rail Line, and that I know that's, the word transformation is used, probably overused these days, but I think that's a word that really describes the double tracking of the South Shore and the extension there, the West Lake Corridor. And those things, again, been talked about for a long time. They are happening now. How important are those developments along the South Shore?
I think they're huge because it's really sort of if you think about it as public transportation, it's missing the point and really the impact. It's a job shuttle, it's an economic development piece, and it puts us in parity with some of the suburban offerings that Illinois has that are still attractive, like say a Naperville or something like that. These are pieces that are expected by the population that are used to the large urbans, and so modernizing the existing with a double track, and then adding a new line that's going into South Lake County that parallels the border makes a system out of this, and it remarkets these communities. And we're seeing a lot of success with the TODs, the transit-oriented developments, which are really just real estate driven by a port, just like a lot of things are. And this is a port to Chicago, the third largest economy. So the better, the faster. And, it's really a neat thing, because as you see decline in ridership in some of the systems, we're getting an increase in residency out of this. So you may not go to work 5 days a week in the loop anymore. You may use our train 3 days a week, but you've decided to relocate. So it's kind of a perfect storm for us. So even if the ridership numbers don't reflect the way that they used to, the new model and the way that we've always viewed it is this is an economic development driver. So you create this atmosphere around the stations, you have rehabilitation of older neighborhoods and redevelopment happening, and people that may go into the loop 3 days instead of 5. But that system itself becomes absolutely critical as a point of attraction.
So you are seeing, the region is seeing an influx of people from Illinois, from the Chicago area, perhaps people who work downtown Chicago. They say, hey, we can get a better quality of life, better cost of living, all those kinds of things in Northwest Indiana. That's really happening.
It's really happening. If you talk to the real estate community, they're very excited. There's speculation going on. If you think of a place like Michigan City and you look at that, where the cooling tower that NIPSCO's had on the beach for an awful long time is coming down. You have the prison there being moved. Another move that, Governor Holcomb made in context with the support of the train that's absolutely strategic. And just it offers a whole new story to be written for that neighborhood. If you have a vacation home, which a lot of people do up in Long Beach and places like that along Lake Michigan, more of those Illinois folks are deciding that's my permanent residence now, because they have the connectivity and the economy is going in the right direction locally at this point too. So it's amazing to see. And the most fun thing for me is I'll sit in a place, a restaurant or somewhere, and you'll hear people talking about this, and they don't know who had anything to do with it, which to me is a real sign of success. It's become socialized.
Yeah. Well, I talk about the challenges over the years. I know you mentioned Mitch Daniels earlier, and I know I had covered a number of things that he had done and wanted to get done in Northwest Indiana. But for a long time, things that just didn't seem to happen. Is it because there are so many municipalities and cities and towns and things, and everyone wasn't kind of rowing in the same direction? That seems to change, and now it seems to be that is the case more often than not, that everybody kind of is on the same page. Is that an accurate description?
Yeah, for certain. I think this is like this in any case you can almost think of, where you have a solvent sort of backer if it's the state of Indiana, and yet you can't seem to get something done. There's usually some kind of clash going on among people, or there's territorialism, and that's not just us, it's everywhere in the world. I mean, major conflicts driven by this sort of mindset. And so, like you said, some of the terms are overused, but to say it's a paradigm shift would be almost an understatement in our case, that over time, people talked enough about and pushed hard enough on and got out there and really kind of said, hey, we're done kind of thinking in a parochial way. We're going to identify our collective assets, and what are those, and some of it's driven by negative things. You look at some of the aspects of the shoreline and start to say, oh, well, this needs to be remediated. The industries, the footprint's a little smaller, and we have some areas that need to be looked at and rehabilitated. And you start looking around and you realize, if you're in a municipality, we just don't have the strength financially to do this on our own. And so the only way out of that is to bond with a larger team, consolidate your efforts, and push forward. And, there were some folks that really got out there and aggressively made it happen. Congressman Pete Visglosky would be one, where, you went to every town hall on the train, and just relentless preaching, really, almost about unity, and I think people have arrived at that place. The legislature has been much more receptive as a result. We've been more focused on best business practices and calculating an ROI on every project from Northwest Indiana. So it's no longer, we're the second largest, just give us the money. I think that was another major shift, was how do you communicate with people in Indianapolis, and the answer to that is as a partner, as an investment partner. And not looking at that market as even from a political perspective as something that's against Northwest Indiana, because the truth is it's not. We're in the same boat here, and we're partners, and I think that's been a huge change. I think if you talk to people like Todd Houston, Speaker of the House, and Rod Bray, President Pro Tem, and certainly our Governor Eric Holcomb, you're gonna hear some sincere understanding about what happens in Northwest Indiana, and some real support. And at the same time, they're holding standard like they're supposed to. And so I think it's become a thing where we understand the language much better now. And consequently how to deliver projects.
From an economy standpoint, when you look at that piece, I mean, you touched on Michigan City, and you can look at Valpo and Whiting and so many other communities that have made positive, investment in their communities to enhance quality of life, and a lot of development there. But there's been a lot of movement on the business and the industry side of things. I think when you look at BP and what's going on there, and what will be going on there from a renewable energy standpoint, there's a lot of focus on data and technology. Give me your take on the economy in Northwest Indiana, because it seems like that's kind of on a rocket ship too.
Yeah, it's a very interesting thing. To me, it proves that as long as we're doing the best we can with what we have within the jurisdiction in which we operate, we're going to be in a good position. And I say that because we live in a very globalized economy everywhere, but more specifically in Northwest Indiana, that is the case. I mean, when you talk about companies that are on scale with BP and U.S. Steel and Cleveland Cliffs and some others, you're very affected by what happens globally. So these discussions about national policy and other things, when you're talking about a fully integrated steel mill or a refinery the size of BP, you're going to be affected. So your job is to be the best you can be in every respect, which also includes the workforce. And it looks like if we just keep focusing on the fundamentals, we're going to be in good shape, because once again, we have a tax policy in place in Indiana that's favorable for those companies. You see some migration out of the big urbans a little bit. We need Chicago to do well, but because of all of that, we're kind of a good recipient right now for things that are not able to be done in those areas, but need to be near those areas, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. As you look, Bill, you are, as I mentioned earlier, a Northwest Indiana guy, grew up in Valparaiso prior to your role now at the White Family Foundation. We'll talk about that in a minute. In your previous role at the RDA as well, you were city manager, deputy mayor for the city of Valparaiso. Does the fact that you grew up there and so much of what you have done in life and achieved in life has occurred there, as you do these things and things on behalf of the region, does your heritage there, the fact that you're a native there, does that kind of give you special meaning as you get things done?
Absolutely. My dad worked for Bethlehem Steel for about 35 years. As an industrial engineer, and gave me a good life education and what that means, and the value of industry. We used to ride by the steel mills, and he would say, "What do you see out of the corner?" And I'd say, "Well, smokestacks." And he'd say, "That's what you see there is beauty."
I love it.
And why is that? And he would tell me from an early age how many people were supported by every job in that place, because he was very proud about being a part of a driver like that, an economic driver. And so it was a discussion. I remember having breakfast in a place called Jimmy's Cafe in downtown Valparaiso, when he told me, if you look around the restaurant, most of these people are supported by a job in the steel mill, including this restaurant. And so it kind of was a good way for him to teach me about how that is all linked together. It's not something that maybe you naturally would think about if you don't have somebody showing you. So when I went away, we lived in DC and Colorado, and moved back. The move back was intentional about being a part of what's happening here. I noticed when I was in DC, you can kind of be a part of that system there if you so choose, but the people that were really driving change were the outside actors that were representing their home areas,
Mm-hmm.
And still the case, that most of those folks don't come out of Washington, D.C. unless they want to be a part of that system. And so that was an intentional thing. It was, I wanted to get back into a public service role and out of corporate because of just the way that I was seeing things in my past experience, and getting kind of bitten by the bug there. And so the best way in my mind was go home.
Yeah. Yeah. Very good. We have much more ahead with Bill Hanna. We'll talk about his role at the Dean and Barbara White Family Foundation. Also, a huge donation, transformative donation made from the foundation recently. We talk about his military career as a paratrooper and an amazing part of that military service that I'm really looking forward to talking about when the Business and Beyond podcast returns.
At PNC Bank, we're committed to making a difference in the lives of our customers and communities by helping them move forward financially. As a Main Street bank, we try to do right by our customers with every encounter. Our local teams offer personalized financial advice to help guide you in making the best decision. We're proud to be part of your community. PNC Bank. See how we can make a difference for you at pnc.com. Copyright 2022, the PNC Financial Services Group, Inc., all rights reserved.
Welcome back to the Business and Beyond podcast presented by PNC. My guest this week is Bill Hanna. Bill is the executive director of the Dean and Barbara White Family Foundation, a Northwest Indiana native, also longtime CEO of the Northwest Indiana Regional Development Authority, so very much involved in so many of the big things happening now in Northwest Indiana. Bill, you, as mentioned, are now at the Dean and Barbara White Family Foundation, a foundation that, well, first of all, the White family. For those who don't know, how would you characterize the impact that that family has had on Northwest Indiana and the state of Indiana?
Oh, it's really been immeasurable from my estimation. It looks, they do so many things quietly and have for so long, and they're completely mission oriented, and I even think about the JW Marriott. If you want to think of something outside of West Indiana, kind of a symbol of the partnership, it would be that hotel that, Dean and Barbara and Bruce and Beth and everybody, Craig White, the whole family is associated with. And, they redeveloped that corner of town across from the Capitol. And now that becomes almost one of the major symbols, if not the major symbol of Indianapolis and the events that are held there and everything else. And so, that to me is a really fun thing to think about, that connectivity between, Bruce and everyone being a native region. And, they're how I describe them as people is a lot of times I say, Bruce was a Purdue grad.
Yep.
And that's kind of enough. It means he works hard and, was inclusive and a long-term thinker, but really was about best practices and holding standard of excellence. And so that's been really passed on to the whole family. He had a saying for his kids was, be a learner, be a leader, be a friend. And that was something they said every day in the house. And I think Beth still carries that on extremely well. And you see it with their kids. And so they're just amazing people. And you can see and feel with them a sense of real responsibility for the place that they're from. There's a deep love and a deep hope there for what we're doing.
It seems like your role there at the foundation as executive director of the foundation, leaving the Northwest Indiana RDA to go there, it seems like a totally natural fit for you.
Yeah, and even at first I'll say I wasn't quite, in the moment. So Bruce called and his first time in my life I can remember where someone calls and says, "Hey, would you like to have this job?" You're not going through the interview process and all of that. And, it kind of caught me off guard. We had just gotten the award for I think the second award for the double track, the first in Westlake. And so it was good timing. And it couldn't have happened at a better time, actually, for me personally. I really enjoyed my time at the RDA, but we were at a kind of a turning point. The funds were there, and now it was getting into a building phase, and they have a lot of talent there now with Sherry and Ziller is the director who's had experience the whole time. And so I felt like it was a good time for me to leave. They have a strong board of directors with Don Fesco as the chairperson. And so it made so much sense. What was really fun about it is Bruce said, I want this to be a strategically important organization and one that is impactful to people. So, we sponsor these, we decided to build a model that was based off of key partners and really make sure that there's as a business person would view it, a retail component where there's an accountability matrix provided by the fact that people are choosing to come to the things that we're supporting, and we're getting constant feedback. And so one such example is the Y system, the Crossroads Y in Lake County now has about 130,000 members. We're getting ready to open. So the largest in the country is in Crown Point. One that the mayor of Hammond is very proud of is getting ready to open a destination Y in Hammond that's slightly larger. Wow. And these things are, if you've not seen them, you have to come visit, because it's nothing like probably the Y that you grew up with. These are phenomenal, huge facilities. They're also opening the Health and Wellness Hub in concert with the Boys and Girls Club and Methodist Hospital in Gary, which is the recipient of READY funds as well. And so that's the bids were just let for that, and design and engineering is starting to take place now. And so they've moved into North Lake County. But with 130,000 members linked throughout Northwest Indiana, our goal as a partner is to have integrated healthcare model in there. So these are health and wellness hubs throughout that we're focused on diet, nutrition, physical aspects of healthcare delivery. And, we have partners with Community that's now Powers Health System, and Franciscan Health is probably the largest we work with, and Methodist is the third. So we have a lot of partners there to pull from. We also support public safety through the MAC Foundation, which is serves over 102 agencies for initial and first responders. And then, we're in the higher education world through Purdue University primarily, with probably the largest gift that happened most recently was in sponsorship of the creation of the Daniels School of Business and the Bruce White Undergraduate Institute there at Purdue, with the goal of being, top performing business school in the country, focused on comparative studies in capitalism and sound business principles, and creation of C-level leaders to populate the C-suite of America over the next 25 years and beyond. And then, of course, our K-12 program is through the Big Shoulders Fund. And what's really fun about things when you pair down to partners like we have is we're all converging on the same goal. So any one of those partners you could call up independently and ask who our other partners is, and they not only know who they are, they know them personally because they're working with them. So there's an overlap between health and wellness and a YMCA structure and a K-12 high performance group, or a pipeline to a university, or the expertise we get back from a university, or the MAC system providing public safety training through all of our partnership for their employees. And what ends up happening there is, through this interface, the culture is improved throughout. It's more collaborative. Even if you look at a tough issue like public safety in some of the areas throughout the country, our public safety folks are converging around partnership issues, and also corresponding more with the community members. And so we're building a better communication system between those. And our hope is that this, actually, I won't even say hope, our belief in our goal and our determination is to make this a national model that's something that could be replicated elsewhere. And it kind of fits into this gap area where this infrastructure that we worked on in the RDA has its place. The private sector business coming in has its crucial component. And then there's the space that we're getting into is where the gap is between those. So we've been very intentional about trying to identify what that gap is. And collaboration, like I said, with the MAC even is a good example. 102 public safety agencies from federal to local all in one spot. We value people who knock down boundaries and get rid of parochialism and just get across the mission. Yeah.
You mentioned being impactful, and so many of the things that you just talked about are indeed impactful. In particular, you mentioned education, and just here within the last several weeks, an amazing gift from the White Family Foundation to the Chicago-based Big Shoulders Fund, $150 million, which is such a big number to that fund in the Diocese of Gary, focused on Catholic education. Just give us a quick overview, because it's such a large gift, and the impact potentially can be so large as well.
Sure. Yeah. So Big Shoulders Fund is been working about 40 years in Chicago, and they're a performance group. They're not a Catholic organization themselves, but they are a 501c3 focused on improvements in the Catholic education system. And so they've had a longstanding relationship with the Archdiocese of Chicago. Bruce and Beth White brought them into Northwest Indiana about 4 or 5 years ago now. And they started working with our schools, about 20 schools all told, three well-known high schools in that system at the top of the pyramid, if you will, here, and that being Bishop Knoll and Hammond, Andrean High School in North Maryville, and then Marquette in Michigan City. What we looked at is it really goes back to our earlier conversation about pieces moving in momentum in Northwest Indiana. So if you look along that train line, and you think about the new development in North Lake County as one example, Bishop Knoll's pretty close to the Hammond train station, which is also the site of, what's going to be one of the largest Ys in the country in health and wellness hubs. With the improvements in Gary that have been happening, the Shoreline, the Miller Station, Andrean is in North Maryville. It serves a lot of students throughout there. And then obviously with Michigan City's improvement, Marquette's right there. So it all pairs well together. These are not new schools. These are schools that have been part of the fabric of Northwest Indiana for a long, long time. And, there's a lot of folks coming across the border from Chicago that are used to having Catholic education in their neighborhoods too. And so our idea there, working with Big Shoulders and the diocese, was how do we increase collaboration and have some very aggressive goals on performance outcomes, and at the same time, maintain the Catholic identity and values-based education that exists within the school system. And so this partnership has been worked on, but in our estimation, the timing was right to just turn up the dial to, 11, if you will. It was, we can kind of wade into, or we can be aggressive about this, and with the goal of having the highest performing network of Catholic schools in the country. So Bishop McCleary, who is the head of the Diocese of Gary, has shown tremendous leadership in this respect. And, at our event where we made the announcement, you could see the breadth of the collaboration. We had, folks from both parties represented there, Governor Holcomb and Todd Houston and Katie Jenner, our education secretary, speakers. We had, because if you look at it, it really could be categorized almost like a P3. You have school choice available for people who are choosing our school. So there's some state dollars that are significantly coming in, and then the gift from us. Then the diocese is raising $50 million to support an endowment that will enhance teacher pay and professional development and retention for them. So it's a whole system outlook. It's a strategic move, and so stealing the phrase from Purdue, excellence at scale. Is what we're about with this move.
Great. It's going to be fun to watch that play out over the coming years. So, Bill, personally, you again grew up in Valparaiso, and your career path post Valparaiso, if you will, includes a stint in the military. Was that your vision to start a career and a career path in the military?
Yeah, but I took a not exactly the straight line, if you will, but I have to tell you, I believe that God works in our lives and there's a plan. And when I look back, I can see it. And at the time, you just don't know. And that's usually the case. Yeah. But I was at Anderson University. I met my wife now at that point. And I told her I always wanted to be in the military. And so she gave me this encouraging push, just go do this thing. And so I left and spent 4 years in the Army, and had a really exceptional and blessed time, I would say, in my experience there. And then
you were a paratrooper, right? So you jumped out of airplanes or what?
Yeah, so I signed up to be a light infantry airborne person, which horrified my mother. I'm going to go in, I'm going to do the soldier. I want to do the job of a soldier. So a paratrooper to me seemed to be the way to go. And so I went to Fort Benning, went through all of that there, infantry school, light infantry, and airborne school as well. During that process, I fortunately was doing well, at the top of the class in different things. I had run track also in college. I was in good shape and ready to go, and was motivated. So you find out about the Army, it's like the old you be all you can be thing is kind of a cheesy thing at this point, but it's true. And so, I was surrounded by great people the whole time. So along the way, I got an offer to be a part of the Old Guard, and it's the 3rd U.S. Infantry Regiment in Washington, D.C. It's the escort to the president and the Army's official ceremonial unit too, and there's different functions within. And so I was assigned to the presidential escort unit, 1st Marching Platoon, and I was there probably 6 or 7 months. And so I saw Netanyahu, I saw Clinton. President Clinton was president at the time. My first mission, if you will, ever was the funeral of Secretary Ron Brown, if you
Yeah.
recall him, died in a plane crash. And so, there was President Clinton and Hillary Clinton and just.
So what was you being the presidential escort, what are your responsibilities in those kinds of situations?
Yeah, so it's really, if you see it on TV and you'll see some of the soldiers from the old guard in the background and other branches too, is really representing the United States Army in that setting with foreign dignitaries and heads of state. And so you're there for those high level functions. And so, these are hand-picked soldiers that get this opportunity. And so I was extremely lucky and blessed to have that opportunity. So I took it when they offered it. And so when I left Fort Benning, originally I was going to the 82nd Airborne, and I was sent to the Old Guard, 3rd U.S. Infantry Regiment. When I got there, my uncle is buried in Arlington Cemetery, and I was aware of the tomb guards, the guys that guard the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. And I was told, you have to wait a year before you try out for that. And the attrition rate there is high. It's about, I think, 80%. Only about 20% succeed there.
Wow.
Through the program. So I wanted to do that right away. I thought so I signed up too early. I went to the sign up session that they have for their specialty platoons, they call them. And the guy basically said, you've been in regiment for 6 months or whatever it was at the time. Get out of here, in a very blunt manner. And so I went back to the company area, and 2 days later, a guy shows up and calls my name in the company area and says, are you ready to go down for training? They had so many people drop out right away that they ended up calling me up. I had no preparation. I showed up. There was about 20 people in my class, as I recall, and they had been working to succeed down there probably a year. I had nothing. Me and it was myself and 2 other people actually ended up staying and passing. And so I don't know if it was just my ignorance that helped in the situation or just being, anxious out of my mind the whole time. But
yeah,
you spend about 9 months in training there to receive your Tomb Guard identification badge, which is now, I think, the least given out award in the U.S. Army. It used to be the astronaut's badge, but they no longer award that I know of. So I received the Tomb Guard identification badge. My number is 441. I think there's about 770 somewhere, maybe a little bit more than that right now, that have ever been there. And so it was an unbelievable.
I'll bet. But Bill, talk about, to the extent you can, you talk about the attrition, but what is involved when you talk about training to do that and the discipline and all that? What was that like? Yeah,
you have to learn. There's a large knowledge packet, which is several pages of facts. So, the job there, besides the primary mission, which is the guarding of the unknowns, of course, is, you're, as on the presidential escort unit, you may be a part of the ceremony, but down there at the tomb, you're going to be meeting people, giving tours. Foreign heads often come down to lay a wreath. They may visit the quarters and the soldiers prior to. We had several celebrities come by, and I think part of the reason they do this is so that you're polished and informed. And so that knowledge has to be recited with a 95% proficiency rate with no prompting. And so that is a tough thing to get a hold of. And the way that they do it is in front of a panel. It's high pressure. The uniform standards there exceed any unit in the military anywhere. And I don't say that as pride of branch. I'm saying it as people have come down and watched us do it from other units that say, I wouldn't want to do that. Yeah. Physical fitness requirements along the way with it. And then you don't speak to anyone and you're not spoken to much. You can only respond when spoken to with your new soldier there or someone who does not have your badge. And so 9 months is a long time to live under that kind of pressure and that sort of solitude, that happens there. I remember the day that I was awarded the badge, it was like the world changed. All of a sudden I was recognized as a person again. And, and then you're part of the team and the world kind of turns for you. But just tremendous things happen. Probably my most memorable thing from my time there was I was involved in the disinterment of the Vietnam unknown soldier, Michael Blase, who's now been, recognized. And part of the team that actually removed the casket from the tomb. And for us, that was just a breathtaking and ultra moving experience because you believe if you get through that program, you are absolutely 110% into the mission. You believe that you're guarding these folks because they gave up everything for you. You do not touch the tomb yourself, and therefore no one else will.
Yeah.
And I swear, I think the guys would give their lives to maintain that honor, which is something I wanted to be a part of. And so there we were, pulling this casket out and washing it down and getting it ready for the ceremony the next day. Now recognizing who it was and knowing the backstory of how it came to be that he was, lost his life in North Vietnam. And so I would say it was a spiritual happening for us and something that I'll never forget.
Wow. Very powerful, Bill. Thank you for your service to our country and service to Indiana, which continues because it is substantial to not just Northwest Indiana, but the entire state. It's always great to catch up with you, and I look forward to our next meeting.
Thank you, Gary. I appreciate our friendship and all you do for the state of Indiana, too. It's been invaluable for what we've been able to do over the years. You've been a real partner, so thank you so much.
Thanks very much, Bill. And thank you for joining us on this episode of the Business and Beyond podcast presented by PNC. It's a weekly conversation with achievers in business, sports, entertainment, and beyond. And you can download all of our episodes, more than 175, and get Indiana business news 24/7. All you have to do is go to InsideIndianaBusiness.com. I'm Gary Dick. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.